GM. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Becoming the Impossible. And the topics are getting spicier and spicier by the days, while the markets are going further and further into the toilet. But it does not matter because we are still building. AJ, Anish, how are you doing this morning?
GM, I'm doing great. Anish and Rich and Rand and NFT Dream. How are you all?
Hey, good morning, everyone. This is another juicy topic. Bryce, you're on a roll here, buddy.
I can't take all the credit for it. It's something I've been wondering for a long time in terms of how guilds play into these different dynamics and why they have gone so unscathed in terms of public opinion during a time where we're seeing prices of crypto fluctuate and we're seeing so many polarizing emotions from individuals across the NFT gaming and Axie space. But we have this world of guilds that I think we are not touching a lot of very integral topics on. So I wanted to bring it to the forefront. And Anish, this is something that you've also been very much prevalent to talk about.
Oh yeah, I was just setting you up for that one, but for sure. Rich, Rand, everyone else, how you doing?
GM.
Doing well.
GM. I love when people say GM. It's just like the perfect thing. I woke up this morning and I went on my balcony and I just yelled GM like 5 times off the balcony. And I'm convinced my next door neighbor like probably thinks I'm a little crazy, but it felt really good to just wake up and just yell GM, to just get it out and like say hello to the world to start your day. But we can hop directly into this topic, and I will kind of give some backstory as to why I wanted to bring up this topic. I also want to bring more speakers onto the stage, so feel free if there's something you want to say, if you want to get spicy, feel free to come up and chat with us about this on all spectrums. Those who have an opinion that is similar to mine and different, because in this space it's safe. We allow everyone to speak and get their thoughts across as long as it's done in a respectful way. But in my opinion, guys, I've been in Axie for 8, 9 months since April of last year. It's been a nice little journey, a nice little ride here. But one thing that I've realized throughout this ride is that there are so many different economic factors that come into play for these different NFT games. Like, for example, we see SLP tanking because there's a lack of mechanisms. And if you go to other NFT games, you're kind of seeing the same thing. Pegaxi and Viz was struggling with, the influx of guilds and players that were coming in that, provide the same value extraction mechanisms. And other NFT games that have utility tokens that are endless printing machines are going to struggle with the same concepts. But one thing that I've realized that is across multiple guilds, the amount of private attention in terms of education and cultivation that guilds provide to their scholars is different on all levels. You have some guilds that are giving scholars the tools and the necessary mindsets to go back and reinvest some of their income so they're not living paycheck to paycheck off of SLP. Some guilds are telling their scholars to go in and, take some of that SLP and convert it to USDC or ETH and buying other NFT assets. And that's great. But in other instances, we see tons of large guilds that are just continuing to push the narrative that scholars should just take their money out as much as possible and just use it to survive. And I agree with that only to a certain extent, because you're not teaching a man how to fish at that standpoint. I think you're truly just teaching them to, make their income and live and do the best that they can and just barely make it and barely survive, instead of teaching them to thrive in this active NFT ecosystem that we're all living in. So bringing this question to the forefront, are guilds problematic? It's very loaded, and it's one that we all have to dive into and kind of solve together. But I want to give up the stage and get the opinions of Anish to start it off, and then jump to some of the guests that are on the speaker panel. But Anish, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So I've been in gaming almost all my life, right? If you take a step back and you actually understand, and it's funny because we were speaking to a game about guilds and how guilds are going to impact their said game, and they're like, oh, you mean like a Discord channel, right? Or you mean like just a group of players that are just playing the game, right? So I think you need to understand that there's a difference between a traditional guild and a guild in the NFT gaming space. So with the traditional guild, you basically have it where you have a bunch of friends, you have like a very finite group of people. playing a game, and like that's the reputation. That's kind of like the end state of where they're at, right? I've a ton of friends that are running guilds in traditional gaming. It's just fun, you jump on with your friends, you bullshit about. It's great. You fast track a little bit into this space. You see Brycent, you see Rich. I'm going to defer to them because they're the guild masters here. Me and AJ have a small one, but it doesn't even touch these guys. But essentially, right, guilds in this space have become somewhat of a business model, right? They rent NFT assets, they have partnerships, right? They have seed round investments. They're doing all these absolutely insane things in the space, helping it grow, right, to an extent. And I don't think NFT games, especially with the hype that we're getting heading into 2022, I don't think they anticipated this type of business model being replicated in their games, right? I think when you think of games, right, they want to be gameplay first. They want to make sure they build a great game, but especially in this space, you kind of have to start thinking about your economics. And to Bryce's point, right, you see that in Axie, SLP, a very like it's a very simplistic model, right? And Viz, I mean, and sorry, Pegaxi with Viz also replicated that model. But the problem was, right, and this is not at fault of any of the games, and it's not at fault of any of these guilds, right? It's just a learning experience heading into 2022. Is that you're gonna have to figure out how both can coexist. That's the biggest question right now. And if you're thinking that like a 70-30 split on a scholarship program and then just paying out, especially as a large guild, is sufficient enough, uh, you're really just hurting the economies in general. Like that's just facts, right? It's already been proven. So heading into 2020, I think a lot of these larger guilds need to start leveling up and figuring out how they can actually help enable and help the ecosystems of these NFT games. Else, we're going to have a rocky 2020 and then we're going to have a rockier 2023 until someone figures it out. But yeah, I will go ahead and pass the buck on to AJ if you have any thoughts there as well.
Yeah, I think you guys hit on some great points, and it's really important to remember that guilds come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, and what they do and how they operate really varies. Whether it's a true DAO or it's completely centralized, whether it's one person or 100 people, whether they pay 30% or 80%, whether they're just money hungry or they truly want to help the people within their organization. It's important to remember that guilds are widely different. Like I said, you have people like Loot Squad and Ready Player One on stage with us, and I would argue those are some of the better guilds out there as far as what they're doing and how they're trying to help people. And I won't name names, but I've seen other guilds that seem like just true value extraction, SLP, and token farms. And I think that's what we're trying to stay away from. So it's obviously a touchy subject, and there's a lot of positives and negatives for guilds. But really want to hand it over to the speakers to talk. And I think the first topic I want to talk about really is for existing games like Axie Infinity and Peg Axie. I mean, do you think that guilds are actually good for this game? Do you think they should implement something like a marketplace where you can rent Axies directly from other people to have guilds continue to be in those games? Or do you think guilds should only be in newer games to help them get the eyes and ears they need to get the player base? With a game like Axie, I'm not sure if guilds are really benefiting the ecosystem anymore. What do you think, Rich?
Yeah, and I want to preface this before Rich speaks. Rich, if you could give us a background on Ready Player DAO, because you guys are doing some exceptional things. Let us know how many scholars you have, how long you've been building, and just give us kind of the Ready Player DAO like elevator, 30-second elevator before you speak, because you guys have really been one of the leaders in this space. And I think in respecting what you've built up into this point, it's understandable that people need to know how you've built and cultivated an incredibly awesome community and how you're looking forward into 2022.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, Ready Player DAO is a player and gaming um, guild and DAO, right? So we have around 2,500 scholars between three different games currently: Axie, Pegaxie, Legends of Inari. And when I started this, the intention was to find a way to reduce the onboarding, the cost of entry to these games, so that people who need them the most, obviously, are the ones that can't afford them. So they're able to come in and play and start earning and potentially buy their own, assets. Um, and I think that's a lot of where these guilds come into play. And I think if we really want to ask the question, have a serious conversation about um, if these guilds are problematic, we need to look at how the space has changed and what the alternative would be. Um, you know, if there were no guilds making these seed investments, like you're mentioning, buying these assets and allowing the players to come in and play. In the current space, the Web 2 space, a lot of those seed investments are filled by venture capitalist funds. And we all know, how a lot of that works. And most of these gaming founders in the Web3 space actually don't really want to talk to some of these VCs in the seed round unless they have to. They would prefer to talk to the guilds because it does a few things. Most of these guilds are bringing in a large player base. Most of these guilds are not selling any of these assets, and they're not traders, right? They are value additive in general, and they're trying to get their players access to some of these games. And then they also have, that large community that can spread awareness of the game and spread the space. And I think what's happening right now is that we're so early in the space that we are seeing more of an impact from, the guilds um, and the players from those guilds. But when the Web3 gaming space gets as large as the Web2 space, I don't think the price action will be as impacted from a lot of these guilds. It'll be more from the individual players and how they're spending their utility tokens. And personally, I believe that this isn't um, an issue that we need to point to the guilds and say it's your problem, like you're creating these issues for this economy. It's more about how the structure of the burn mechanisms and the utility for the tokens are applied into the game. Um, and if that is built out correctly, and there's like, I think that's a very deep conversation as well, then it won't matter who's, paying how much, where that's going, etc., as long as, the guilds themselves aren't taking massive amounts and just dumping it. So I think potentially there could be a larger issue if large guilds that are trading and are in it more for the profits versus the current state where there's a lot of guilds holding could be a bigger issue. Um, and I'm just curious what your guys' thoughts are on that.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And I thought something that was interesting that Gabby told me a little while back, but I didn't really think about it till he told me, was that a guild like YGG would actually take up less than 1% of the player base of Axie Infinity. So although when we think of these guilds, we think they're massive, large players in the ecosystem and they can actually shift what's happening. But in reality, the fact that YGG is less than 1% of the Axie economy means that they can't actually move the market, and the majority isn't them. So that's important to keep in mind. However, when it comes to new games, guilds can have a really tremendous effect on how a new game gets exposure, how many new players can come onto new games. And I wanted to see what the other speakers think about how guilds could positively affect new games, and then maybe what are some of the negatives that guilds bring to brand new games that are looking to expand their player base.
Yeah, I guess I can start. I think like from my perspective, I'm very much a firm believer that if you're a guild and you're raising any sort of VC capital, for the most part, you're in incredibly good shape. Versus a smaller guild where they're building their upstart. There's even less price action that they can do to the scene. But I think it's incredibly I think it's just incredibly dry of an approach to just think that the whole idea of what a guild is should just be a yield farming and like business model where everything is focused on, okay, we buy assets, we lend assets, we farm. And yes, of course, in some games that do get tokenomics models right, I think it'll make sense. To be completely honest, right now, Axie doesn't have the tokenomics model right around SLP for this to continue to make sense at scale. And the reason why I say that is because if you look at the dynamics of it, yes, you have guilds like Ready Player, DAO, guilds like Loot Squad, guilds like YGG, where we can preach, hey, scholar, reinvest your income and just a portion of it, so you're actually saving and you're earning and you're learning all of these financially intelligent intangibles that'll improve your life. But if you have the large conglomerate of a user base where they're not learning and they're not being taught in the right way and they're getting the wrong education, and they do have this fear of doom complex because of what you see on the internet 24/7, you're not actually moving the needle forward. So for certain guilds, yes, it might work out in the stance of, okay, we're teaching people in the right way and they're able to use that to make sound financial decisions. But if you think about the user base and the scale of burning mechanisms, how many times will we have to have a conversation in the future, whether it's Axie, Pegaxie, or some other game, where you have to think, oh man, this one burn mechanism is good for 3.5 months, and wow, okay, what's next? How many burn mechanisms and temporary solutions will potentially need to be created as the user base scales up, if you're not bringing in commercial audiences and user bases in places where you spend money on dumb shit consistently because you're used to it. If you think about it from the US perspective, which Axie has yet to really tap into because they haven't really put any marketing there, the United States as a whole, we spend money on incredibly stupid shit. And excuse my language for those who, aren't expecting me to cuss. But I went out as a kid and I've spent thousands of dollars on FIFA Ultimate Team players, or skins in Valorant, or skins in other games. And guess what? The game didn't offer me anything in return other than I get to inspect that weapon in my pre-round before the round starts, and I've spent thousands of dollars in it, and it's like, damn, that's really, really cool. But we don't have that type of a user base in Axie yet. Could it potentially come when V3 releases? I think so, if there's like a concerted effort to bring in commercialized spenders in places like Europe and the United States. But in traditional gaming, they automatically have that, versus an ecosystem like an Axie or an NFT game, where you're starting off in a space where the user base is probably 10 to 15% people who do spend money, like, and then the other percentage is those who have to live off of this NFT gaming ecosystem. So if we're talking about an ecosystem where living has to take precedent over the gameplay, entertainment, bringing in other audiences, yes, I think you're going to see an imbalanced economy. But I do think it is a portion of a responsibility of us large guilds to say, hey, how do we go about expanding our knowledge base to bring in people who aren't just scholars? And not only does it help scholars, because now you have the prices of these currencies going up because there's a more concise and balanced user base, but how can guilds affect the future price action of these different games by going out of their way and participating in marketing and collaborating with people who might not even know this exists in first world populations and consumer audiences? And I want to get Rand's thoughts because I see his hands raised, but yeah, I do think we need to take a more forward facing approach to bringing in commercialized audiences that will also help stabilize these different NFT gaming economies.
Yeah, let's do Rand and then Horace. I saw that you went off mute, so let's follow in that order.
Yeah, I really agree with what Rich and Brycent said. And, I don't think guilds are necessarily problematic. And I think we have to kind of like look back at the history of what's happened here in the past year and COVID and the growth that we got from onboarding all the scholars that we did and all the good that it was able to help people. And I agree with Brycent. We're like working on teaching our scholars. It really brightens my day when I hear another scholar was able to purchase the assets he needs to start his own scholarship, or is now staking AXS or something like that, to earn a little bit of residual income and able to teach them like how to grow financially and help themselves. And I think some of that comes with, exactly like Brycent said, is like turning over the player base a little bit from the history of the past year. And when V3 and Origins drops, having a game that people are really in for the entertainment, and a lot of those players coming on, like you said, from America and other countries that have capital to spend, that want to spend on spamming emotes to their friends while they're playing the game, or want to spend on changing the board and things like that, I think will make a difference. I don't think guilds are necessarily a problem. I think honestly, guilds really, really helped this economy blow up in the past year, and not only helped the economy and the game and Sky Mavis, but helped all the individual players, make an income where they really, really needed it. And I think you can pick out points of individual guilds that have done bad things, as well as individual people and players as well. So, I think it's just a broad paintbrush being used here. And there's a lot of good people, like you said, a lot of good people on the stage and good guilds doing good things. So
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, Rand. And I think Horace had his hand up, so we'll go to you. And then Cease put his hand up. And then want to throw it over to Future Laszlo. I know you're actually a part of a game company, so it might be interesting to hear your thoughts. Let's go for it.
Hi, thanks for having me. I just wanted to say that the topic is very interesting, and I actually think it's important to talk about. So basically, for anyone who I guess doesn't know my history, founded OneUp. It's a gaming clan, esports team. It's a little bit of everything. We're actually moving into a full-on academy right away. But basically, we were actually in traditional games like Rocket League before. Moved into NFT gaming just because I've been mining Ethereum for 5-6 years now, and sort of had a heads up. Got into Axie a little late compared to others, but early enough to learn about the whole ecosystem and everything. So basically, a lot of people said some very interesting points. So I just wanted to talk about a few. Basically, I think that there should be, I guess, a definition for what we're going for here. To us, what an esports team is a group of professional, let's say, players or competitive who are looking to, do whatever they can to become the best at the game. ROI, earning an income, is a secondary, let's say, cherry on the cake to them. It's not really one thing that they're looking at. And when you look at it from, let's say, a scholarship program, because there's that within these ecosystems as well, those don't educate, like you said, they're scholars in terms of, how to learn financial literacy, let's call it, in NFT space or crypto or blockchain, however diverse you want to get with your clan. I know some people are sticking with Axie. A lot of others have sort of diversified into other games. Some are now even teaching about, trading crypto, investing in crypto. And, I'm sure other things will come from that after, because one thing that I think people are forgetting is marketing is a huge, huge part of this. And unfortunately, one thing that I found with all of the games that have come out with the space is we are very reliant on our community to fund the game and the future, where other businesses, because they're not community owned, have that portion of revenue to grow. This space and these ecosystems can't afford that. And so where a traditional business uses marketing to grow, their profit, this space needs to use marketing or marketing awareness tactics to generate income from outside of the community. And what I mean by that is not just acquiring new players, because that's just turning over, let's say, outside circle, funds into player funds. I mean, what's the best way to put it without giving too much information? I guess basically what OneUp is about to do is, let's say, start a YouTube channel. Ad revenue that comes in through sponsorships or from ad rev is now distributed to the community. So it's not the community always having to flip NFTs and a marketplace fee that funds everything. And so one thing that I think I've already started talking to a few other players about is, what if there was a nonprofit organization that was driving, let's say, an academy scholarship program, at least in Axie. It's also tournament and a league based. You're encouraged to participate in the community by paying 1,000 SLP membership, or let's call it a battle pass per month. And, you know, on top of that, you get other perks like getting to talk with pros or people in your league, or NFTs that give you passive income or so on. I mean, everything would have to be built into the ecosystem. I don't think it's on Axie Infinity to provide that necessarily. It could easily be done by the community and the group. And so, you know, I think that there's a lot of ideas that are going around where if it's just considering, you know, a guild as a scholarship program, I think, yes, that's bad for the ecosystem. That means that everything is profit driven most of the time anyways, I should say. And yes, that's maybe good for the short term. You know, you get a lot of people who are continually reinvesting, but it's really up until that owner or that group of owners decides that, okay, we reached our plateau, you know, let's say, where we are now earning a passive income we are happy with. We no longer have to continually reinvest. And so now they start taking their funds out. And any business does that, and that's great for ecosystems in general. But when the ecosystem is only that, that's what I don't agree with. I don't think that's sustainable. I don't think that Axie being forced to, let's say, find burn mechanisms is the answer. I just think it's about creating opportunities that allow us to stake SLP like we're doing with, well, I should say farming Ron by creating liquidity pool with SLP. But, you know, doing that in other forms, I think will benefit the community. And I think it's just about teaching. I think not enough people are developing programs that teach their scholars. And that's important, I think. To speak with, I guess, expanding into other games and how these esports teams can be either a positive or negative thing in the space. I'll be honest, coming from the more traditional side of gaming and then moving into NFT spaces, these teams and these small discords exist and have existed forever. They're necessary in order for games to grow. You know, in Rocket League, for example, they have this really big, let's say, community-driven Discord called Six Mans that's sort of taken more seriously than the own, let's say, like Rocket League's own MMR and league rankings. And it's more just because pros are playing with pros often. You know, it's like a dedicated league to growing past a certain point. You know, this is for like amateurs to become pros, and you can watch the whole progression through MMR and in the Discord. And so I think that once that exists in NFT gaming, whether it's a global thing that connects a few, you know, like all games and has like global rankings for different NFT games because it can be tracked on the blockchain, and that should be pretty easy to do. Or if it's just specific to Axie and that's how it starts, you know, I think that that's going to be a good thing. And again, it's community driven, I guess, SLP. I don't want to call them sinks, but, you know, ways to save SLP. And so, yeah, sorry, thanks for sort of went on a little rant there, but I thank you for having me.
No,
Well,
I think
thanks
that
for
was.
joining. Oh,
No, I'm
sorry.
sorry,
Go ahead,
AJ.
Bryce.
I think that was an awesome rendition, Horace. One thing that you said that was super interesting, and I'm just going to be touch on it really quickly, because I want to pass it over to, I think it was it Cease next. But one thing that was interesting was the whole idea around how games market in this space versus a traditional space. I do think that what we've seen with Axie so far is they've had the luxury of having some amazing players and content creators and people who have, you know, taken on that marketing lift for them. But I mean, we also need to hold games accountable to take the necessary measures to expand in certain places. Now, it's a timing thing. The first one is, yes, Axie's waiting on V3. So we don't know what their marketing strategy is once V3 launches. But to say that, you know, a company that's raised $150 million has, you know, billions of dollars and locked in liquidity, and they've just been fucking crushing it all of 2021. I think the onus is on them to take a portion of those proceeds and start marketing into audiences that they've, you know, found difficult to impact up until this point. But we can touch on that a little bit more later. I want to throw it over to Cease.
GM, everybody. Cecil Joseph. That's
GM.
Cease. I actually do realize there's a lot of nuances to that, because on the one hand, it does seem to be on the hands of these guilds, and that's why these guilds are created, to give that autonomy to the communities to then build it out. But in that regard, it's as if the projects themselves have the opportunity to pass the buck and not necessarily have to take responsibility for that growth and that outreach to different sectors that are otherwise excluded, whether through regulations or just the fact that, like Americans, we've been conditioned to play games without any monetary incentives in place. So I think it's important to look at the definitions of a guild for each game. Of course, it depends on which game you're playing, what the gameplay is, and also if there's a governance token as well as a utility token, because there are those that may generate tokens for staking the NFTs that also act as the in-game avatars, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they have in-game utility tokens, like Axie Infinity and other games that follow that specific model. For example, Metroverse. While it seems like with the 3D design that they have and the amazing community that they're building, they're not actually in a 3D world, so to speak. They're not a virtual world where you can actually walk through and play the game that way. They're just a strategy trading game. And by staking their 2D NFTs, their city block NFTs, you can just generate their Met tokens with nothing else expanded beyond that. But even they're doing big things without a DAO and without a utility token built into that. So I think it's also important to look at the difference between maximalism and conviction. Now, I want everybody to follow Brycent. I want everybody to follow AJ, Anish, Horace, and Rich. I threw you both a follow as well, because what we're dealing with here is conviction. When it comes to maximalism, investors tend to blind themselves to the issues that these projects face that ultimately stand in the way of long-term success for those projects. What we're doing here is dissecting the issues we're actually facing as investors, users, and builders of these communities and of these projects so that they can be successful in the real world. And that's what's so amazing about these conversations that we're having and the spaces that people like Brycent are building. So please throw them a follow, and please keep an eye out, because I do want to dive deeper into Legends of Venari, Pegaxi, TCG World, and a lot of other metaverse ecosystems that are doing big things. So, Brycent, I appreciate you putting me onto those, and I'll be writing about those this weekend.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us. And I want to throw it over to future Laszlo. I know you have some interesting things going on because you're actually part of a game, Hexarchia, and I think you have your own group as well. So I want to hear your thoughts, and then we'll throw it over to NFT Dreamlab.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, AJ, GM, everybody. A little bit about myself, just for context for what I say, is I do act as head of community and head of partnership for a game called Hexarchia, which is its own play-to-earn game, war and strategy game. And yes, I do also manage my own small Axie guild, nothing like Loot Squad or Ready Player DAO, but it's taught me a lot about how to incentivize and engage, a small community within Axie. So my thoughts on, I guess, the space of guilds is on both sides. I am a little conflicted, but I want to go over each my pros and my cons here. So as a pro, I think that guilds are some of the best onboarding tools for new games to come out. I think YGG and Gabby has always said this about their guild, that new games will come towards YGG as a onboarding tool to get immediate engagement and immediate player base for players that want to play the game but don't have access to the NFT assets that may unlock the play to earn mechanisms within the game. And it's funny because at Hexarchia, we actually, the game that I'm head of community for, we actually do a similar thing where we are actually focusing on guilds to partner with first and foremost before we even go to other people like pre-seeds or VCs that may want to invest in the game, just because as Rich said, there's already an expectation that these guilds will bring new player base and new engaged player bases into the game community already, which is just much better for the long-term economy and community of the game. Secondly, as a pro, I think guilds are just an incredible education tool. They basically form these micro communities where people can actually make a tighter bond with other people that are playing the same game as them. And can just really get closer to all the people that may be able to help them with strategy or be able to help them with any other issues that may occur inside the game or outside of the game. and yeah, I mean, guilds have been around for a very, very long time. I mean, even before crypto gaming and NFTs were a thing in World of Warcraft, in Roblox servers, in Minecraft servers, and you see all of these social elements arise just because, and even grow the game in a exponential way, just because there are these micro communities that make friends with each other and are incentivized to just do better, because that's just how humans have always reacted. We're social beings. But on the con side, I think that the expectation for earning has come to a point where people are a little too excited about the earning potential for these games. And I think Axie may have been a bit of a catalyst for that, because it blew up so much this year. And I mean, maybe I can speak from my personal experience as someone who kind of went through that. As I came into
Sorry.
Oh, no,
Muted.
y'all good.
Not bad.
Y'all good. So yeah, maybe I can speak a little bit towards where the expectation is at from on the Axie side for earning, because I came into the Axie side maybe like 5-6 months ago, around the time that famous play to earn documentary about Axie came out, and I was just blown away by it. And I came in and I bought a ton of Axies, and I started building a scholarship, and I just thought it was an amazing experience to help people out. And I was calculating my ROI. I was like, how much should I actually spend on this? What's going to be sustainable for me to do this long term? And really, first and foremost, I was excited about the empowerment of helping people, and building a community around that. But obviously, as putting my business hat on, I had to be cognizant of the economical spending that I was doing, so that I could make sure it was sustainable and I wasn't just blowing money away. So I invested a lot of money into Axies, and now it's just kind of been like a shaky position for me of whether or not I should be investing more into this ecosystem, whether or not I should be diversifying into different game assets. I'm not exactly sure, and while I do remain very bullish on Axie as an ecosystem, on Ronin, on the team, I think that a lot of other guilds that may not have, I guess, the um, economics or the money available, like some of those larger guilds, um, we're not really in this space to build out a ton of the other awesome like ancillary mechanisms that these big guilds have done. And I'll allude to Loot Squad, and the comics that they're doing, and all of the other programs that they build outside of just the scholarships, and how strongly they incentivize their community. I think there are a lot of guilds in this space that aren't really set up in that way, and really didn't have that expectation, that primary objective in the first place. And I think that that's not really a good thing, because people came in with such a high expectation of earning and ROI, maybe a bit like I did. And I'm not sure that all of those guilds will persist. I mean, I'm going to be here for a long time, but I don't know that I can speak the same for many other smaller and medium-sized guilds that came in this year. But I think it's still, I'll close this off. I think this is still net positive, and large, of what guilds do bring and offer to games. And new games will be coming out in by and large and a lot in 2022. And guilds will just become an increasingly important mechanism for onboarding and building this community outside of the primary marketing of the game. So I think net positive, but I think that we do need more amazing leaders like Brycent and Rich, and AJ and Anish to build out a lot of these other ways to help the scholars outside of just the earning potential, because I think the expectation is very much there right now. And maybe Dave can speak a little bit about this as well. He had an awesome article. Anyway, thank you, GM.
No, thank you. I think you had some amazing perspectives, Laszlo. Would love to connect with you offline sometime and chat more. Also about Hexarchia, I was one of the people who got to really test it out in the early stages, so it was definitely a blessing. I know we had Captain on the stage. If he's still around, I'd love to get him back up to get his perspective. But let's jump to NFT Dream, and then Asobs, and then Joe. I'd love to hear you talk as well. So NFT Dream, GM. Well, it's almost GA for afternoon. But how are you?
Yeah. Hey, Bryce. It's GN from here. in back in here in the Philippines. So yeah, I think to answer the question, whether I mean guilds are problematic, I think going back to the earlier point from Future, I mean guilds definitely bring a net positive into into the community. However, I think each guild has this responsibility to like take care about their community, whether I mean especially during these tough times. I mean tough times because I mean um, most of the people, I mean for example speaking from my community, right, most of the guys are really fresh into like cryptocurrency investing, and in general financing and literacy, right? So some of them don't really know how to react, or some of them don't really know what to expect during these times. So as guild managers, I think we have responsibility to like provide them certain educations about I mean various aspects. I mean the number one is the ecosystem of Axie, because most of them they just see SLP. SLP is going down, but they're actually more than that, right? I think you published this video about like other possible ways of earning in the Axie ecosystem. I mean that's something that I shared to them, and then it's like just surprising to hear that some of them never really thought about it, right? So I think that's one thing. Financial literacy, the idea of opportunity cost. I mean the fact that Axie is a I mean, I think there was one post about play to earn, or it should be play and earn. I think the play and earn is more a better description, because it's an opportunity. I mean, rather than you play other games that there's no added opportunity to earn. I think that's something that is a positive that people should realize from that aspect. And then I think one thing that I would also like to mention is that as guild leaders and or guild managers, um, there are certain engagements that they should be doing, so that the people feel that like they're part of this family. They're just not in this community just to like earn and then leave, right? I think there's a part of it that they should have this sense of belongingness, that they feel that they're part of it. There are events, they meet each other, they see each other, they grow friends. So probably this is just one game, but it's more than that. It's that community that you're building that help them get along and then go through these tough times, so that we're into this thing not only during the good times but also even through the bad times. You're all solid, and then you can get through these kind of tough times. So I think, yeah, engagement, market education, or financial literacy. I think that's one big aspect. To be frank, as a Filipino, that's something that is a big gap that we are learning.
That's great. I see, Captain. I don't know if you've been getting rugged, but we want to get your perspective first.
Yeah,
Before
let's get Captain to jump in there for sure, and then we'll go
Yeah,
to
yeah.
Stock.
Thanks very much for hosting this, and appreciate you. Sorry, I'm on an Android. It's a new phone, but it's getting rugged for whatever reason. But I love this conversation, and as a builder of a game, and we're looking at incorporating technology for to make it easier for guilds to join our game. We're watching closely what's happening with Axie Infinity and trying to learn from it. And one of the questions that I have, and I'm trying to understand, is whether the issues is a symptom of guilds, or if it's really just more of a symptom, like you discussed, of the economy and the tokenomics. Because if there was no guilds, there could still be just individual players that are doing the exact same thing that guilds would be doing, right? Like it could all be individual players, and they all could be net extractive from the economy. So I'm trying to learn from you all, since you have much more experience with Axie Infinity. Is it a lack of a complex economy where there is only a couple of things that you can do with SLP? Is that the core issue, does play to earn need to be incorporated in a different way? So one of the ways that we've been trying to do it is where what you earn really is items that drop in dungeons and the rarity of those items. So instead of just getting the currency, you're getting an item that people may not just look at as like dollars in the bank. They may attach value to it or like really want it because they have something that their friends don't have. And then maybe by having rare items, then you can get into PvP, and then that's where you can earn, but kind of making the pure play to earn really at the top of the ecosystem. And then the rest of the people are like more so playing or trying to level up versus just extracting. It's a really complex problem, but I'm curious to get your all's thoughts. Like if you were kind of restarting Axie from the beginning, what changes could they have made that would have, made it so that they don't have the problems they're having now?
Man, your perspective is awesome. It's a pleasure to have you here because you've been creating some really dope stuff with Crypto Raiders. I don't know how familiar you are with Binary Assets. He's one of my co-founders. Told me about Crypto Raiders a long time ago. So it's really cool to be able to have you in here and listening to a community that is heavily Axie based. Some of us know about Crypto Raiders, others don't. I will say, just from the high level, would love to have you back to talk about Crypto Raiders and kind of how you guys have been building. But yeah, I think it would be really awesome to open up the discussion. And my thoughts are, if I had to go back and do Axie over again, I don't agree with the arbitrary printing of a currency and having an unlimited amount of it. I really do think that eventually, you're always going to be fighting the gun in terms of how many burning mechanisms you can find or create and that. And I think it would have been much better to have why not have a play to earn pool that is just completely like created or added value to it from the community. Like if you have a marketplace and you're getting $25-30 million in value for that marketplace every day, why not just have a portion of marketplace transaction fees and spins go directly into a play to earn pool? I'll open it up and throw it over to Aesop's. I know we've had a fair amount of conversation over these.
And just to understand what you mean, so you mean that basically making play to earn pegged to almost economic activity, and therefore it's not net extractive because it's defined by almost like it's like a government putting like a 5% sales tax, and that 5% sales tax goes into a play to earn pool, but then that pool is kind of moving almost independently of the rest of the market.
Exactly. It's a variable pool that, for example, let's say the market's booming and a certain game is doing 50-60 million in volume a day. Well, guess what? You have a 5% pool or something where that play to earn pool is now being able to variably add more dynamic, token incentives and rewards into the system, instead of thinking that, hey, just create a token that just prints endlessly and then try to create as many mechanisms as you can on top of that, some which may be band-aids and others which may be real legitimate long-term solutions. But ultimately, I think you're always fighting the gun when you have a currency that has an endless amount of printing available.
Yeah, so basically instead of play to earn influencing the economy, you would have economy influencing the play to earn.
Exactly. And you can see what the yields are because maybe you create some type of algorithmic system that, based on how much marketplace value a transaction is happening, it balances and tells you, okay, this is what yields are looking like. But guess what? Guilds, organizations, people, players are going to be more likely to put money back into the marketplace and buy more if they know that their buy action and their ability to create more opportunities for others directly starts affecting the actual yield that people are earning. So yes, you might have a system where, okay, like some days play to earn pool is doing a lot better this month. Other months it's not doing as well, but it's never a system where you can say that it's based on just the amount of actual gameplay mechanics, because value, like the value that is derived is very much perception based. Any game could launch a mechanism and we might think, damn, this mechanism isn't that good, and then boom, they have to go back to square one and think of a brand new mechanism and hope that works. And how many times do you get a chance to get this wrong before either, if you're a small game, or you run out of money? In Axie's case, they probably don't have that because they have, the funding. But how many times can a play to earn game in the future afford to get the burning mechanism wrong is the question I'm asking.
Well, and I really like the system that you're talking about, because another concern of mine is everyone, if you've been a gamer your whole life, you know that games come in and out of flavor. and player bases go through peaks and valleys. But if you peg play to earn based on the economic activity, then it naturally scales up and down instead of it being static, where it will absolutely crush the economy if there's a player base pullback. So that's very, very interesting. I appreciate your insight.
And I'd like to step in as well, real quick. I think for me, one of the parts that actually failed on was that there's not enough SLP utility. When I first started playing Axie Infinity, I actually enjoyed the game and I thought it was fun. And I was earning all this SLP, but there was nothing for me to do with it other than breed for more Axies. But I didn't really need more Axies. I was happy with my team. I would occasionally want to switch out an Axie for another one, but then I would have to use ETH for that. So I just accumulated SLP and there was nothing for me to do with it. I didn't want to start a breeding farm, so then I would just sell it. So for me, that was the biggest problem that actually had and still has is there's just not enough SLP utility. We know in the future that'll change. It's just we haven't seen those changes yet. So we're in this lull period where you see the prices declining. But for me, that's the one thing that Axie could have done better from the start is just have more SLP utility for the average player that doesn't want to grow his Axie count and just wants to play the game for fun. If you're a casual player, there's nothing to do with SLP besides sell it. So that's a little unfortunate. And that's obviously a really big topic and would love to have you on the show in the future. Like Bryce said, love your content on YouTube. Love what you guys are doing on Crypto Raiders. But I wanted to throw it over to Asobs. I think that's how you say it. And then Dave as well to get your thoughts on everything.
Perfect. Thank you for having me. Man, it's going to be hard to follow that one up. Captain kind of killed it there. Two things I wanted to bring in were just different perspectives from a scholar and manager perspective that I think breaking it down to the fundamentals, right? So from a guild perspective, I believe that the guild managers, owners have a responsibility to build a community. And I think a lot of us can agree on that. You know, build relationships, teach people about the game, teach people how to hit 2000 MMR, do better, strive to be better, but also teach them, as Bryce mentioned earlier, teach them to build long-term wealth and be able to provide for themselves for a future. I mean, a lot of us, I'm sure, understand that these people, a lot of the scholars, people in the Philippines, they're not making a lot of money. I mean, I had a scholar who literally couldn't afford to feed his daughter. They were a week without food when I hired him. And it's a really sad story, but it's a reality for a lot of these people where a couple bucks a day is able to provide them for food. And I think that's also something important to understand is that people like that, they need to, if they're part of the game, and maybe that's the question there is, should they be part of the ecosystem? And should they be scholars? And what should that look like, right? That play to earn versus play and earn idea. But, you know, when you talk to people like that, there is a need for them to cash out because they literally need to pay for food. And I think that's something important to understand. And also, as well, you have some that just simply don't want to think long term. And that's, you know, everybody thinks their own ways. Personally, I believe in thinking long term, but I have some scholars that they simply wanted some extra cash. You know, they're in college and they want to go drink with their buddies. And that's cool too. You know, everybody has their own desires and interests and things like that. But for like myself, and I feel like a lot of other managers and owners of guilds feel this way. I currently have 90 scholars, so I guess I'm small to mid-sized guild, nowhere near the size of a lot of people here. But for myself, it was putting in some money that I had to be able to earn some money, be able to get some ROI on my investment, return on investment. But you know, Bryce mentioned earlier, like spending hundreds of dollars in FIFA. I've also spent a few $100s as a kid in Clash of Clans, but I think that's very different than Axie because it's one thing to buy myself, you know, upgrades for my town hall on Clash of Clans or things like that, or buy characters in FIFA or all these different things in traditional games versus and you could do that in Axie too, right? I could buy myself cool Axies that I love, that I think are awesome, awesome teams, hit top MMR brackets. I could really build up an account for myself and spend a lot of money. But when I'm buying 90 scholarships, there's also an expectation because it's not just for fun at that point, right? I believe, and I think there's an important emphasis that needs to be placed on a social responsibility there. But also, you got to understand that people there are trying to make some money, right? And I think a lot of us do understand that, but I think it's just important to reiterate these facts of people are investing, getting 90 scholars, 90, 100, or you have people, some people in here who have over 1,000 scholars. They're doing that not necessarily just to have fun, but to make some money along the way too, and help others, help other people like the people in the Philippines to make money, be able to make a living, change their future trajectory. So I just think those are two things to reiterate and just remember as we're having this conversation is guilds have amazing potential to provide for people, help people in the Philippines earn a living, be able to put food on the table, be able to do these awesome things, but they could also be a tool for bad too. It's really how we decide to use them and how we want to go forward, right? We could choose to make Axie or these other games play to earn, or we could go the play and earn route, where you're able to play and earning is a nice side benefit, or we could add emphasis on earning. But I think that's really at the core what the issue here maybe is, and I'd love to hear other perspectives on that. But it seems like the difference is, which way do we want to go? Do we want to go to play to earn, or do we want to go to play and earn, where it's a nice additional benefit on the side?
I think that's an exceptional perspective. Appreciate you coming up, Asobs, and definitely chatting on this. I think it's great to have a very wide ranging amount of ideas and thought processes on this, because everyone's value comes from their perception and their backgrounds and their experiences, and being able to share it together is incredibly important. Today, this topic, in my opinion, is so dope. If we have to go over time, we will. I know we brought up some more speakers. I want to jump to Joe, and then anytime I can have this man on the stage, one of my favorite people in the space, Dave versus Axie, I want to hear his thoughts, and then hop over. There's another NFT game called Influence ETH that I would love to get their thoughts on this whole mechanic, and then close out with Nifty, and then kind of see where things go from there. But it's a pleasure having everyone on the stage. And in the future, guys, I want to get this to the point to where it almost runs like an open form conversation where no one is afraid to kind of just jump in and say what they want, because I feel like even with the hand raises, sometimes it kind of gets a little bit rigid and people kind of just go on sometimes a little bit too long of a cameo. But yeah, let's hop over to Joe, and then jump to Dave, and see where things are.
Thanks, Bryson. I'll try and keep this as concise as possible. Lots of great people, lots of great points. So I mean, it's always hard to go before or after Dave, but I'll try to do my best. So I wanted to give a bit of a different, maybe different perspective. I think I made sure to set a reminder on this post for guilds. So one, I think to start, to keep it as concise as possible, I 100% think guilds are a net positive or an absolutely great thing for this space, right? So for quick context, I've been in esports in particular on whatever we call it, the Web 2 world for more than probably 5, 6 years. And I think that what I want to contextualize for a lot of people is, I think a lot of people in the guilds, the easiest thing most people associate guilds with is something like an esports organization, right? And I've been in and around these places with devs from the Web2 and game publishers, and I can tell you that we're in a lot better place. And I would say it as an experienced esports organizer, we've done a lot of the major events Southeast Asia, or design institute of design for like Valorant championships, or accredited third-party organizer of Riot. And someone who's been there for 5, 6 years, it's actually I would say we're in a much better place in terms of organizing. If you remember if you think of Web2 compared to what guilds are now, and I got into esports because I wanted to work in gaming, and the only way to do it in Web2 was either be building games or be doing something like esports. And it took esports a very long time to get to a place where it kind of is now. And it's still a very extractive place. I think Horace earlier brought a great point up about, I think Brycent, you also brought up earlier, related to getting more sponsors or things like media. And there's a reason we joke that esports is also exactly like traditional sports, where it's sports entertainment. And the entire model is completely owned by eyeballs, right? Yeah, you have the game, you have the other dichotomy of in-game purchases by the publishers. But anybody who's doing anything in the space as an organization, you're completely in control and controlled by sponsors. You have to organize your items, and the publishers, if they want to or they're willing to work with you, right? You can have whether it's an esports team that is eyeballs with entertainment or performance, that is all that's controlled. I was close to leaving esports, honestly. I had a business that was running itself. I wanted to walk away. When I discovered Axie around a year ago, what I think is special about guilds and what we're doing in play to earn or play and earn is, I think at the space where we're at now, is that if you look at my pinned tweet from almost a year ago, or more than a year ago now, was that this is the first time you have something you can organize in gaming that has more potential for financing. That's not just sponsors, which is a completely new type of thing that we're experiencing everywhere, right? This is the closest that we've ever been, or been able to work with devs of games and be able to reach more people. So I think overall, we're just at the other extreme. I think we're going to get to the point of all these guilds, like I'm sure Loot Squad, what YGG are going to have all these other types of sponsors and be able to bring that type of entertainment and balance. I just think we're at the start where it's the other extreme at the moment, where everyone's learning the power of financialization for these guilds in a blockchain world. Um, and we're experiencing now just only one game kind of having that first boom of sustainability. Now, when more of the games come and more of these organizations start being able to um, sponsors or proper mechanisms for that will make sense. Right now, we had to completely change our esports organization from our Web2 organization because normal sponsors don't want to sponsor crypto related games. We had Rivalry, a betting sponsor for season 2 of LSL, and they insisted in paying part of the prize pool in fiat, which is absolutely crazy to me. We only found out after. So I think that we're just getting to that place. I think guilds are absolutely net positive. We're just at the earlier extreme where we still have to create value for that, but it does more good, I think, than bad, and it's a much better place than Web 2. I will 100% fight for that. Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. No, pleasure having you up here speaking. Again, we love hearing perspectives. And Joe, spot on. I totally agree with you. Let's jump over to Dave. And I see we have some other speakers up here. Would love to hear from Nifty and Kagi and Influence. We're going to go over time today. I think this topic and this discussion is incredibly important. So yeah, let's make it spicy and let's hear from everyone. Dave, how are you doing? GA, because now we're in the afternoon, but a pleasure to always hear what you have to say.
Hey man, yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. It's still morning for me. I'm an hour behind, so that's fine. First of all, Aesop's, I hope you got your engagement you wanted out of your schmear videos for Bryce and I. I saw you did a public apology on Twitter for him. I haven't seen mine yet, so whenever you want to throw one out there, I'd appreciate it. Beyond that, I think as we look at the guild side, there's a lot of opportunity within how guilds are going to evolve into the future. And I think there is onus that can be thrown back onto Axie. There's also onus that can be thrown back onto scholars and guilds in general, and just kind of how people are investing. One thing I would say, though, to go back to your conversation, I wanted to jump in, but you and Captain were having some good conversation around just how the SLP economy could be tied to the actual economy and kind of a pool from that. I don't disagree that that's an opportunity. However, I will say SLP right now is kind of tied to that. Like there is obviously an unlimited SLP minting that can be made for the Axies. But once you have a boom, you're going to see SLP go up. You're going to see the earning potential go up. You're going to see less Axies in the marketplace and Axie value go up. So all of that in some ways is going to be tied to the demand in the economy and how it's running. That said, a few thoughts. One, yeah, the mindless farming of SLP, 1,000% in my mind needs to go away. And the bigger thing that I think is I don't know if SLP is the problem at its face value. And what I want to tie that to is think about value extraction from the game, right? So it's okay to have a lot of SLP if you're going to use it in the ecosystem in a certain way. I do think there needs to be more ways to use it. I think to Nish's point or AJ's point, I forget who brought it up, but just having more ways to use SLP is a necessary call out. However, what I think is actually most prudent is just the removal of money from the ecosystem in general. I think there should be a tax on that. You know, like it's almost like if you leave the country from the U.S., you can't bring more than $10,000. If you do, you have to pay taxes on it before you remove it from the U.S. It's a similar thing when you kind of think about the ecosystem here, because you can't just be a value extractor without giving back into the community. And that should go for everything, because obviously you could say, oh, every time you withdraw SLP, you have to pay 5%. Well, then you can just convert it to ETH. And then do you have to pay the SLP fee? So I think having a built-in SLP burn mechanism for every time that you withdraw anything from the marketplace and convert it into MetaMask or to Binance or wherever you want to send it, no matter what type of money it is, AXS, it's then leaving the ecosystem. So you'd have to pay a fine. That's not a fine, but to kind of what you guys said before, like a tax on it. It's a weird thing, but it is just a way, and it's not necessarily going back to build roads or do something cool. But it is a way to, I would say, like create kind of the dilution of value just being taken from the ecosystem And so there's less true sell pressure on SLP by doing that. But when it comes to guilds, I don't know. Guilds are very unique into how they are. I think the new conversation is being had around play to earn and play and earn is awesome. Play and earn is a really a much better way to describe it. And there was this awesome thing I tweeted late last night, I think, or early this morning. I can't quite remember. The days are kind of molding together as I'm spending more time in general and on Twitter. But a scholar wrote about, kind of his experience as a scholar and just what he thinks the issue is with SLP. And he's just like, yeah, it's us. He's like, I played video games for 10 years. I love Valorant, but I've never made $1 off of it. I've made a lot of dollars off of Axie. And he's like, that's amazing to me. And he's like, but the problem is me. He's like, I don't do a lot else with my SLP other than cash it out. And he's like, it's a reality. He's like, it's a harsh reality, but it is the reality to me as a scholar. So I really love that perspective. I don't think he's the only problem, because at the same time from guilds, you're going to have the same issue where guilds are going to do two things right now with SLP, to some of the points earlier, because they only have two. Well, they have 2 to 3 options. You could stake and LP it and make potentially some on fees, but realistically, the reality of utility on it is sell it for cashing out to go do other ventures. And if you're a guild, especially if you're raising investment money, you have to be looking for ROI for your investors and for yourself. And or paying yourself. And then the other option is just make more Axies. And so if the market's not hot, there's not a lot of opportunity to really just make Axies that are going to be selling for a ton. So you're just potentially overbreeding, or you're just making into more scholars, which sounds like a good thing at face value. But then every scholar is now, creating more SLP in the marketplace and ecosystem there too. So I do like what we talked about a little bit a couple shows ago, Bryce, about, guilds creating other ways to burn SLP. I think that's a really interesting idea. And I think that there are some solutions into that in the future. But at the same time, there's 2 other realities I've kind of tweeted about, but I wanted to discuss here too, and see if anyone had other thoughts on. Is one, the first issue, right? If you have a person that is quote unquote a scholar, apprentice, guildie, whatever you want to call them, and they are purely using this as a job and only value extracting, I don't know how much they're going to say, hey, I make $20 a month. I'm going to give up 10 of that because I want a skin or I want a piece of merch. I just don't know how that's going to happen to burn SLP. The second problem we have is there's currently 23, 24 billion SLP in the ecosystem that's overfarmed, and that's just kind of like sitting there. And that's minted off of the game already, so it's not just like that's just like sitting in people's accounts. So it's 26 billion. Sorry, my number was wrong. It's actually even higher now. We're adding about 1 billion every few days. So at 26 billion, I would only bet that 1 to 2 billion at max is sitting in a scholar's account available to do anything with right now. So now, if we're actually creating quote unquote sinks, that SLP is owned by guilds, by kind of just bigger whale investors that are going into LPs, by just other places in the ecosystem. But it's typically going to be held by a company, guild, big person investor in the Axie ecosystem that is not held by all the scholars. Like I would bet, again, like the 10% max is going to be held by scholars that are actually going to help sink it, and maybe another 5% held by players that are buying new Axies and doing new things that might want to use some for a sink. So that's the other thing you have to think about too, is how do you actually start burning that from them? Because I don't see, maybe like a YGG as an example. I don't know why YGG is going to all of a sudden decide, hey, we're going to burn 5 billion SLP from our holdings. Like, what's the incentive? The only incentive would be to create something new that they're perceiving to have value in the future. Like I know some people talked about, like what if there was a more advanced SLP where you could pick the parts you wanted in the breeding system, or something where you could almost re-roll it if it comes out bad. Like, so you create kind of a more advanced one that hopefully if you had 2,000 SLP, this is worth more like 2,500 SLP. That's the only way I see that happening. So there's a lot of other conversation there too, where eventually, like to me, like the 26 billion is kind of gone. The problem is, how do we level out the burn and mint situation? And then over time, that 26 will be diluted, because as it actually grows up with B3 and land, you're going to have a lot of other options there too. So again, long narrative there, but appreciate you having me up, and good conversation.
Well, if I could just butt in really quick, I think that if you look at the real world economy, money is a function of time, right? And so you can spend, you can earn by spending your time, and then you spend the money to save your time. And I think that's what Axie needs to do is that SLP should be what you earn for spending time. And then people that don't want to spend time but want to compete in whatever the game is at a high level, then they're the net buyers to then, you know, save time and not have to put 8 hours in grinding. They instead buy SLP and then use the SLP to like upgrade their Axie to make them more powerful or add items to them so that they can compete at the high level.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. Let's jump over to Kagi. What's up?
Yo, what's up? Thank you for having me. This is kind of cool that I'm here with Brycent. What's up, bro? What Dave said, I want to tap into that. Long-term sustainability with some type of fee. I actually read a white paper very, very recently, and it actually blew my mind. And now that Dave brought up the fee, some type of stability fee, I read this white paper, and basically they have like this 30% fee on this game. I can't say the game because it's still not out, but they have like this 30% fee if you sell the token within the first 30 days. So let's just say you got, you know, SLP, and then you got this fee. You got this 30% fee if you sell it within the first 30 days. And then that fee goes distributed to different things. You got liquidity, you got distributed to holders, to people that hold the token. And then we got a percentage that goes to rewarding the ecosystem. And then there's a percentage to burn it. That's within the first 30 days. And then there's other fees like 15% if it's within 30 days and 90 days. And then 8% if it's like 90 days, 180 days. So it changes. So something like that could be implemented in Axie for sure. So in terms of the scholarships and guilds, I can't really talk too much there because, you know, I don't really run one. Somebody else runs it for me. So I will be talking shit. But I'm really down for some type of fee for the SLP moving forward for sure. I mean, the ones that we have now out in the ecosystem, like we can't do anything about it. But what we can do is actually start burning Axies for sure. We could start burning Axies now, and that would create a demand for SLP. Now that Axie burning needs to have a purpose, right? And that purpose, I don't know what purpose that could be, right? Like there has to be an incentive to burn those Axies. Maybe some resources that would help you upgrade other Axies, right? And I don't think SLP should be used for a bunch of things because then now we have SLP as the currency, as the main currency of Axie Infinity. I think SLP needs to stay around the breeding process, right? It can't go too far. It can't go too far out because if not, we just have a currency that works for everything else. And yes, it will burn SLP if you're using it for other things, but I don't think that's the purpose of SLP. Right, that's why we're gonna have so many resources.
Kagi, one quick point on that though, just to call out if you do talk to them again, if you just do a time delay, all you're gonna do is delay when that sell-off happens, and then nothing changes. So yeah, they're gonna maybe save the 30%, but then every 30 days you're still gonna have the sell-off. So the first 30 days are great because no one's selling, but then as that 30 days becomes a rolling 30 days, every day people are selling. And that was the point that I was trying to make too. If they want to convert to ETH in Katana in the ecosystem and go buy Axies, there's no fee. Like you don't lose anything. It's just when you want to cash it out to fiat, like when you want it to leave the Ronin network, that's where that fee is attributed to it too. So that any withdrawal of funds from the Axie ecosystem as a whole, you're just going to be paying a tax on that back to something, a burn mechanism on SLP or whatever. But
I want to interject really quick and get both you and Kagi's opinions on this. If we don't see any major Axie update around the burning mechanism before the staking rewards for Roan farming go away, what could a potential SLP sell-off look like? And then after that, let's jump to influence.
Oof, that's spicy.
You want to go first, Kagi? You want me to go?
Yeah, no, I just have for me, it's just, it has to come around Axie burning. There has to be some type of Axie burning so that people have an incentive to, you know, to breed Axies again. And that Axie burning needs to result in something, whether that is more resources, like other resources that would help you like upgrade the Axies that you care about or something like that. But I think it's around the Axie burning for sure, for me.
I'm not gonna lie. It could be bad, like real bad, like actual all time. Like I'm seriously talking at like I'm just gonna go off of pure knowledge right now. I'm gonna bet actual all time low number, like 0.003, something like that. Like so, 3/10 of a penny price on SLP. If nothing changes before the time that Ron farming is done, and then Ron gets released. Now, there's
You're banned. You're blocked.
uh, the only options I really see that can prevent that is there has to be another incentive to be. So there's a couple things. One, incentive to be in the LP. Now I think the incentive to be in the LP is your bet on Sky Mavis figuring out a better solution for SLP in the short medium term, because I don't think SLP lives at 2 cents. I think SLP lives at 5 to 9 cents. Like kind of just that feels like the right token mark. Now I don't know if you're going to farm as many tokens. I'm just saying what I think SLP should be worth in the long run. Like you might be farming only 3 tokens a day, but SLP is worth 5 cents, kind of a scenario. So I think there is some people that will bet on, oh, it's going to go up at some point, and I don't need the money right now. There will be others, if nothing changes, then obviously there's going to cash out and go into other liquidity pools or go to some other metric. But there is a lot of things they can pull, right? Like they can announce new Ron farming opportunities. I think there will also be opportunities to make a Ron SLP liquidity pool. I'd be shocked that doesn't exist. I think, and again, I think there's also like if they can release a sync mechanism now, so at least the SLP supply stabilizes. I still bet SLP goes down in price. I just don't think it's like doomsday where everyone actually panics because we truly are at an all-time low. And again, like for me, I've been burned. I'm not gonna lie. Axie has made me a lot of money, but Axie has also burned me in a lot of scenarios. So I'm going to make this bet right now that Axie is not going to burn me. There is going to be something that changes. My SLP pool has already lost me about half its value in impermanent loss. Obviously, Ron will make up for that, but if there's no more Ron, then I'm just losing money and getting a little bit of fees. So I really do hope that I'm going to bet that they improve some things, and if I leave my LP in there for, say, 3 to 6 months, SLP will be up and my impermanent loss will be pretty much washed out, and I can cash out close to what I put in, if not even profitable.
Yeah, and I agree with what you said, Dave, and I hope you're right about this, because if we see a mass exodus out of the liquidity pool and people start dumping SLP, we could very easily see a token that is at an all-time low. So we hope they find a solution for that. And I think we had a few hands up. Influence. I know you're up here and you guys are a blockchain game and want to get your thoughts on guilds and how you're sort of approaching it. And if you had any thoughts maybe on Axie guilds as well, whatever you want to talk about, let's go for it.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me. Really interesting conversation that I think is desperately needed because there's, thousands upon thousands of people playing Axie, or million plus at this point. And with the price going down, it's pretty dreadful for a lot of people who got into the environment to, extract value and make a living. And I think, I don't want to spend too much time on Axie because we've really talked about it quite a bit. But the thing is with Axie, and a lot of people have been mentioning this, is like play to earn versus play and earn. Our game Influence, when we first released in April, or just publicly, people knew about our game. We always said we were a play and earn game because what we saw with other games that were, marketing themselves as play to earn is it immediately put a red flag up as, okay, well, this is a game to extract value. And then you're always trying to compete with people taking money out of the game forever. And that's all they actually want to do. So I think there needs to be an emphasis on the enjoyment of the game and for people to really want to be part of the game, not just to extract value. So with Axie moving to like their new setup and land and everything of that nature, hopefully that brings in a swath of new players that actually just want to play the game. People like me who spend maybe 10, 20 bucks a month in video game world. If that happens, you have no issues because you have a competing force. If you have people putting money into a game and people extracting at a fairly even rate, that's totally fine. you can continue to grow that way. It's actually fantastic. That's a a feedback loop that works, and it can be plus and minus on each side, every day or month, and it's okay. It's just you want to make sure that the game is fun. So moving into guilds and how this I think really works is that with influence, our game is set up from the beginning to have organizations, guilds, alliances. This is a cooperative, interactive and immersive game that we hope to attract a lot of real gamers, like strategy nuts who love EVE Online, Stellaris, things of that nature. And because of that, these guilds, I mean, we already have YGG, Baze, PathDAO, V Empire. They've all bought like some of the largest land in our game already, and we're working with them to help them kind of build their empire, to make it so that they have a bunch of people who are probably playing more on the side of play to earn than play and earn. But then you have the competing force of what we're attracting, and if you look at our community, we have thousands of people who had never even heard of block. I mean, they probably have heard of blockchain, but they never had a wallet or ETH before coming into our environment and wanting to purchase land. So we're
Hey,
bringing
influence.
in.
Can you just elaborate on something for that for me?
Yeah. Go, what do you need?
Because this is actually a key part of guilds that we didn't quite get into because we're talking about SLP and really like I think it stemmed to like the SLP portion of guilds versus the actual reality of guilds. My problem with guilds right now that I want to know from your side is guilds being able to buy such rare things early and at a discount. Can you
Yeah.
elaborate as to if that happened in your game? Obviously, it creates hype. Obviously, it allows for opportunity.
Yeah, that's real.
However, instead of having one company like Activision or Riot making all the money, it's now going to be 20 guilds that are the stakeholders and all these major play to earn games that are making money, selling them to the secondary people, and maybe they make money too. But you're basically locking in guilds are just kind of a permanent marketing strategy that no one's addressing the elephant in the room, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, we've thought a lot about that actually. So in our game, we have 250,000 assets or asteroids in our game. That is our land. There are 69 huge asteroids, which are the largest land areas, which alliances, DAOs, guilds, things like that are really attracted to. And we actually have a fair amount of individuals who really they're not part of any DAO. They've purchased these in kind of our initial sales, and what we have done is we haven't given them any discount. We have zero VC funding, and everyone who has purchased asteroids is paying market rate. And so we aren't, we're not going to DAOs and being like, look, we'll give you a 50% discount on land so that you can hype us up. And the thing is, with these huge areas of land, like it's I mean, our asteroids start the huge asteroids start at $65,000 and go all the way up to $1.8 million, and it scales directly with the size of the asteroid. And predominantly, the cheaper side of the huge asteroids have been purchased. So we still haven't sold, any of those massive asteroids. Now, to your question, in terms of like, how does that work long term? Like, you're basically putting all the value into a small number of people's hands. Well, we've actually broken down the size of our asteroid belt pretty realistically. Our game's based in future realism. So a predominant amount of the 250,000 are fairly small asteroids. And
Hey,
these are not.
influence. I just want to jump in really quick. A couple of things to kind of preface. The first one, personally, I saw you jump in the room. I don't know enough about the game yet to kind of be able to make decisions. So like when you're going off on like these deep, amazing cameos about the game, it's like it's still kind of new to me. So I'd love to set up another Twitter Spaces call where we can dedicate an entire hour to influence to give people the correct amount of education and knowledge on what your game is going to be. But we are like almost 30 minutes over time, and I just want to jump to Jay Clutch and then close this one out. But I will DM you directly so we can schedule a time to just literally have a show about influence.
Yeah, absolutely. Here, I'll just finish it. Can I have 30 more seconds?
Yeah, that works.
Yeah. So to answer the question of like guilds in summary and everything like that is, yeah, a lot of the bigger guilds are going to own the larger assets, and that's really unavoidable because they have the bigger wallets. You're not going to have a single person with a $250,000 or more to spend. So it's just ending up like that. But DAOs are really cool, and this is Web3. It's decentralized. You're supposed to have an economy that is owned and operated by the players. And DAOs allow multiple, hundreds, thousands of people all working together on a single asteroid or land in any game. And so when you think about that in the size distribution of our game, predominantly most of the asteroids are small. And therefore, you're going to have a collective of hundreds of thousands of players that own these smaller asteroids, and they can compete evenly with the larger DAOs. And we did that intentionally so that there isn't, a massive competing force of these few big guilds that can just overpower everyone and extract all the value.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. And we'll definitely have you back on the show at a later time, just to have a dedicated show on your game. So I'll reach out to you. And I don't know who was next. I think it was Jay Clutch. I want to turn it over to you.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate you bringing me up, and thanks for giving me the honors of being your closer on this segment. Happy New Year to anyone I haven't talked to since last year. Quick 2 cents on the guilds being problematic. I think guilds are just a natural progression of most good games. I think eventually guilds will be either something that's brought in the beginning, or the game itself will just develop guilds on its own. But a lot of the questions I'm hearing, I can't help but wonder if they're not actually a problem of guilds, but more just a problem of the scholarship model as a whole. So how I keep thinking about it is scholarship models inherently is a job. We are providing an asset to enter the game. We're removing a barrier of entry. This isn't much different from, say, Web 2.0, where I apply for a job, I get a desk space, and I get a computer, and I get work to do, except instead of salary, it's commission-based. So I wonder if our problem's more these barrier to entry games that we have right now in NFT space, and if maybe a more healthy economic model would be more of a barrier to content or a barrier to earning. So I can play a game for free, but let's say there's raids where I need X amount of people to do it, or I need an X amount of time to level up my gear, buy materials, and progress through content before I can access certain things. And maybe guilds will provide basically a way to lift that barrier for me, or maybe a partnership I can work on. I want to ask the panel their thoughts on that.
Let's definitely get some closing comments on that question. If anybody wants to jump up and speak, and then I'll close us out with just a slight minor cameo to end it all.
Yeah, I really want to throw it over to Herm as well. He's been on the stage for a while, and I haven't heard him talk, which is disappointing.
Well, honestly, AJ, I appreciate you. All the speakers on the panel, hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending where you are in the world. But actually, Jay Clutch, to answer your question, I think about it kind of like a car dealership. All right, if you have a salesman, they're sold or they're paid based about the cars they sell. If we no longer have cars coming in or people wanting to buy cars and just buy the cars just to drive and enjoy them, then the salesman, after a while, their commission is going to dwindle and become zero. And that's kind of similar to the problem that we have now. The game has to be fun. People have to want to be here and spend money here. Value is being extracted. Guilds are making money, which is, it's excellent. It's going to happen. But if there's no hook to keep people wanting to keep spending in this market, whether it be Axie or whatever else, is on the Rona network, then this issue will not only permeate what's going on in Axie, but it will permeate NFT gaming as a whole. The games have to be fun enough where people just want to stay and play.
I think if I can add that real quick to your good question, Jay Clutch. I think in mine, I think there just hasn't been enough games yet who've had the liberty, I think, to make free to play to start with, especially in play to earn. A lot of the games that came out a lot of the players are scholars who learned about play to earn because of Axie. Like things that Gio's mentioned many times, that how important it was to have the free to play model to start with for people to try. But I guess I feel like a lot of games are pressured or going after the initial user base who understand tokens and who wanted to make some ROI. But I think I like to think it's a collective understanding that the free to play to start and the game being fun is good. It's just that there hasn't been any games that have been able to start with a free to play version from the get go. But I think there are many on the way already.
I think just to add to that, there's one game that I played in 2020. It's called Lost Relics, right? And that model is amazing. It's actually the best model I've seen for a player to earn. The problem is that when you start free to play, and then you have like in-game drops for everything, like everything is earned within the game, and then developers earn from like marketplace fees, right? The problem is that at the beginning you have like, I don't know, maybe 50 players, and those 50 players they grind most of the value out of the game. But actually, he's in a position right now that they have so many players that if they started like a free to play model, right, and then they drop in game loot, then it's gonna be decentralized enough that many people are gonna start earning these items within the game, right? So that's the main issue with a lot of the games that start free to play, and then you kind of just grind the loot out, and then you can sell it if you want. But at the beginning, it's only like 50 players, 20 players. So those people grind everything out, and they become the whales of the game because they started first. So it could work, the free to play, and Lost Relics did it. It has a great economy. It has a great economy. The thing is that it's on engine. There's a lot of fees. So that's kind of the drawback there with Lost Relics. But they did it pretty good.
I think sorry, Kag, real quick. Like I think that most of the games coming out that I feel at least you're probably the most experienced in seeing a lot of new ones. Free to play is I think that there's no NFT rewards yet for like the versions that are free to play like intended. So that's what I was thinking when Jay Clutch brought it up. So
yeah. No, that would be the best model, to be honest. The best model is a free to play where you have automatically 5 million players already grinding, right? So whatever the time you put in, that's what you're gonna get, and of course a little bit of luck because everything is gonna be like loot drops, right? So there's a percentage of the loot dropping, so you gotta get a little bit lucky. But still, I think I think that's the best. Like somebody like I don't know, like World of Warcraft were to do, or Activation or one of those games, they do like a free to play game, and then all the drops are in game. I mean, it's gonna be the best model in my opinion, and then people can just trade everything that they find in the game and they earn from marketplace fees. That would be insane. The thing is, starting with a lot of players from the beginning, so it's actually like decentralized enough where not all the loot is belongs to like 5 people or 10 people, right? So yeah.
Definitely appreciate the perspective, guys. I do got to cut it here. We went 30 minutes over. I want to say a big thank you to AJ, Anish, Dave versus Axie, Herm, Influence, Joe, Jay Clutch, Future, Kagi, NFT Dream, Aesop's, and everyone else who was on stage that had to drop for various reasons. It's a pleasure getting all of your perspectives. I think we need to have more topics like this, more spicy conversations where people have differing opinions and can come together regardless of what the circumstances entail. And dude, just have fucking open conversations. And I want to continue doing this. I will say next week it is about to get a little bit less spicy, but there is going to be a bit more alpha on the spaces. So you're going to want to tune in. On Monday, we have the Guild of Guardians founding team coming on, and they're going to be chatting for an hour. On Tuesday, we have Pegaxie's founding team coming on and chatting for an hour. And then on Friday, we have Kieran and the Illuvium guys coming in. So we're going to have some dope conversations. I would love to have anyone who wants to come up on the stage, chat with these people, open the tune of conversation, ask them difficult questions, and get to the center of all of these different topics about what the structure of the game economy is going to look like. How do guilds fit into this ecosystem? How does the little guy fit into these ecosystems? And how do we build a world where play to earn in NFT gaming, and excuse me, I'll start saying play and earn because I feel like that's where this space is going now, but where NFT gaming as a whole is able to fight traditional gaming. I know we have a lot of creators in this chat, and at the end of the day, we all want to see NFT gaming overall flip traditional gaming, and it's cool to see that we can all come together and have open conversations. So, guys, thank you again for tuning in. I'll see you again on, what's today, Friday? Well, next week. I'm an idiot. I'll see you next week. Become the impossible. Take care.